HeyMax and Brazil, the complete strategic analysis. This is an independent analysis of whether HeyMax, the Singapore rewards platform this series has examined across 13 volumes, should enter Brazil. Researched in August 2026 from public sources. Nobody paid for it. Nobody previewed it. Nothing in it is financial advice. Brazil closes the Three Market Americas Commission that produced the United States and Canada volumes, and it earns its place by being unlike every market before it in one precise way. It is the first market this series has studied where the refusal, and yes, this volume ends in refusal, rests on the demand side rather than the supply side. Every prior no had a supply story. Korea's pool was drained. America's layers were full. Canada's gaps were incumbent adjacencies. Brazil's loyalty economy, by contrast, is large, growing at 14% a year toward a projected $3.33 billion by 2029. Structurally fascinating and genuinely gapped. The audit will find real deficits of exactly the kinds HeyMax fills elsewhere. And none of it matters, because Brazil fails a test no market in this series has ever failed. There is no corridor. HeyMax's members do not fly there. Its treaties do not serve it. Its coalition cannot reach it. Brazil is not closed. It is orthogonal. That verdict could be delivered in a page. So here is why the volume runs 16 chapters. Brazil is the most instructive loyalty market on Earth, per chapter of study, because it runs, at national scale and years ahead of everyone else, the two experiments that will define loyalties next decade globally. Experiment 1, Financialization. Brazil invented the loyalty program IPO, programs trading as public companies with published economics. It built the world's only mass consumer miles-resale market, where ordinary Brazilians sell miles through brokers as household income. And it produced that market's spectacular collapse, the 123 Milhas failure of 2023. $500 million of debt. Tens of thousands of consumers burned. The largest loyalty-adjacent consumer catastrophe ever recorded. Experiment 2, the Payments Earthquake. Pix, the central bank's free instant payment system, has in 6 years become the country's dominant retail payment method, making Brazil the furthest along preview anywhere of the question that should keep every rewards operator awake. What happens to interchange-funded rewards when instant payments win? Singapore's PayNow and Hong Kong's faster payment system are earlier points on exactly that curve. So this volume is built as a dual-purpose book, a complete market study that settles the entry question honestly, and an almanac expedition into the two Brazilian experiments, extracting what they teach a Singapore platform that will never operate here. Same ground rules as every volume, sources for claims, labels on estimates, absences treated as data. 16 chapters. The Financialised Market, the Pix Earthquake, the Points Hub, the Airline Three, the Milheiro Economy, the Fintech Giants, the People. The Gap Hunt, the Null Corridor, the Almanac, and a verdict with falsifiers. Let's begin. Chapter 1, the Financialised Market. Begin with the fact that makes Brazil unique in loyalty history. This is the country where frequent flyer programs became public companies. No other market financialized loyalty so completely, so early, or with such instructive results. And the whole Brazilian system still runs on the structures that era built. The history compressed. In 2010, the airline that became LATAM spun its Multiplis program onto the São Paulo Stock Exchange, the world's first major loyalty IPO. And the market valued the points business at levels that startled the airline industry. For years, Multiplis traded at a market capitalization rivaling its parent airlines. Gol followed in 2013, listing Smiles, which likewise spent stretches worth more than Gol itself. Think about what that means. The frequent flyer program, the marketing department's afterthought, worth more on the open market than the airline that created it, planes, routes, and all. The listings forced something loyalty had never had anywhere. Audited, quarterly, public program economics. Gross billings from selling points to banks. Redemption costs. Breakage. margins visible to anyone with a brokerage account. The world learned what a mile was worth in Brazil because Brazilian law required the disclosure. Both programs were eventually bought back in and delisted, Multiplis by 2019, Smiles by 2021, as the airlines reclaimed their most profitable divisions. But the financial market DNA remained. Brazilian loyalty thinks in billings, spreads, and float in a way no other consumer market does. DOTS, the coalition program, extended the pattern with its own listing in 2021. Why did financialization happen here first? 3 structural reasons that still shape the market. High interest rates made the float, the cash programs hold between selling points and funding redemptions, genuinely valuable. Loyalty operators were, among other things, shadow money market funds. Banking concentration meant a handful of huge issuers bought points at national scale, giving programs bond-like revenue streams the equity market could price. And a culture of indexation, Brazilians' long experience of inflation, made the population unusually fluent in treating abstract units as stores of value to be actively managed. Loyalty programs in Brazil were never marketing schemes wearing accounting disguises. They were financial products from the start, and everyone, issuers, members, regulators, treated them accordingly. The consequences define today's market structure, and each will recur through this volume. Consequence 1, the bank program axis dominates. Because the banks were always the program's real customers, Brazil evolved the points hub model, the national clearinghouses Chapter 3 profiles, structures with no exact parallel anywhere. Consequence 2, the consumer treats miles as an asset class. The resale economy of Chapter 5, ordinary households selling miles for income, is unimaginable in markets where miles are seen as coupons. It is the natural behavior of a population taught by its own programs, IPOs, that miles are money. Consequence 3, transparency cuts both ways. The financial framing that gave Brazil the world's most sophisticated loyalty consumers also gave it the world's most aggressive loyalty arbitrage. And when the arbitrage industrialized, it produced the collapse Chapter 5 documents. For this series, the financialized market carries a specific payload because the trajectory it previews is the one HeyMax's own region has begun. Programs as balance sheet assets, the American securitizations, United mortgaging its program. Wholesale mile sales as core revenue, HeyMax's own chocolate finance line. Community valuation tables functioning as price indices, the American machine with Asia following. Brazil ran the full arc first: marketing scheme, financial product, public company, reclaimed division, and the arc's lesson is double-edged. Financialization multiplies a program's value and exposes it to financial market dynamics that marketing schemes never face. Runs. Arbitrage collapses. A currency that becomes money inherits money's pathologies. HeyMax, whose max miles are further down the money road than most Asian currencies, published wholesale prices, a fintech lattice, yield products, should read Brazil as the map of where that road goes, including the ditch beside it. The market's structure established, the next chapter meets the force currently rearranging all of it. The central bank invention that did to Brazilian payments what no regulator's cap ever did to any interchange pool, and what something very like it may eventually do to HeyMax's. Chapter 2, the Pix Earthquake. In November 2020, Brazil's central bank switched on Pix. Free, instant, universal account-to-account payments, available every second of every year to every bank customer in the country by regulatory mandate. Within 18 months, it was Brazil's most used payment method. By 2026, it processes more transactions than credit and debit cards combined and has become a standard integration inside loyalty programs themselves. This chapter treats Pix as what it is for a rewards analyst: the world's most advanced experiment in what happens to interchange-funded loyalty when a state builds a free alternative to cards. The mechanism of the threat, precisely, rewards economies everywhere in this series float on interchange, the merchant toll that funds points. Pix charges merchants effectively nothing. Every transaction that migrates from card to Pix, therefore, removes its toll from the rewards pool, not by cap, not by negotiation, by substitution, and migration has been massive. Cash died first, Pix's initial conquest. Debit followed. Why maintain a debit card when Pix is faster and free? And credit's transactional share erodes at the margin. Even as credit survives on its financing function, Brazilians still use credit cards heavily for installment purchases, the beloved parcelamento, which Pix's newer installment features now attack directly. The central bank, unlike any Western regulator, did not argue with the card industry about fees. It made the fees irrelevant. The loyalty industry's response is the instructive part because it previews adaptation rather than death. Brazilian programs did not collapse. They replumbed. Points programs integrated Pix as a redemption rail, points converting to instant cash. As an earn trigger, merchant-funded points on Pix payments, the merchant paying the reward directly, replacing the interchange middleman. And as a settlement layer, the banks shifted rewards emphasis toward the credit products Pix touches least, premium cards whose value is credit and status, not payment rails. And the program's revenue mix moved further toward the direct partner model, merchants funding points as marketing, exactly the shape this series' partnerships volume calls partner-funded. Brazil's rewards economy in 2026 is smaller than its interchange-era counterfactual. But it is alive, restructured around merchant-funded and engagement economics, rather than toll recycling. Now the read across, which is the chapter's purpose, because Pix is not staying Brazilian. Its architecture, central bank rails, mandated participation, zero merchant cost, is the explicit template for instant payment systems worldwide. And HeyMax's home markets are all running earlier versions of the same movie. Singapore's Pay Now, already the default for personal transfers, expanding through merchant QR codes. Hong Kong's faster payment system, Thailand's prompt pay, and the region's cross-border linkages knitting them together. Southeast Asia's card interchange pools, the quiet subsidy under every rewards economy this series has priced, face the same substitution pressure, on a lag of perhaps 5 to 8 years. The Brazilian evidence says 3 things to a Singapore platform planning on that horizon. First, the toll pool shrinks structurally, whatever regulators intend. Technology does the capping. Second, the survivors are the operators whose economics never depended on the toll. Merchant commission models, partner-funded deals, owned currencies with wholesale revenue. Which is, once again, and now with Brazilian confirmation, exactly the revenue architecture the partnership's volume prescribed. Third, the instant payment rail itself becomes loyalty infrastructure. Pix-integrated programs show the endgame, where the reward attaches to the payment moment directly. Merchant-funded, no card in the loop. A design HeyMax's Pay Now linked, no custody architecture is unusually well positioned to build when the region's curve catches up. One more Brazilian data point completes the chapter because it quantifies the stakes. Brazil capped debit interchange at 0.5% in 2018, prepaid at 0.7% in 2023. Conventional regulation of the kind this series has cataloged across 4 markets. Nobody in Brazilian payments considers those caps the story. Pix made them footnotes. The lesson for the series' interchange doctrine, in its final form, the pool's enemies are not only parliaments and lobbies, but engineers. And the engineering version arrives faster and reverses never. Every future volume's interchange chapter now carries a Pix clause. The earthquake mapped, the volume turns to the structures standing on the shaken ground. Beginning with the points hub the banks built, which has no counterpart anywhere else in this series. Chapter 3, The Points Hub. Between Brazil's banks and its airlines sits an institution this series has met nowhere else. Livelo, a joint venture of Banco do Brasil and Bradesco that functions as the national points clearinghouse. Understanding Livelo is understanding how Brazilian loyalty actually roots, and why the market's structure answers questions Asian markets are still asking. The model, Livelo, began as the shared points program of its 2 bank parents, the destination for card points earned across two of the country's largest issuers and evolved into a hub. Tens of millions of members hold LiveLo points. The points arrive from bank cards, from a large earn mall of retail partners, and from direct purchase. And they leave through a redemption catalog whose stars are transfers to the airline programs, Smiles, LATAM Pass, Tudo Azul at posted ratios, frequently juiced by transfer bonus campaigns that have become the rhythm of Brazilian points life. Around the hub, the other banks run parallel structures, Santander's Esfera, Itaú's ecosystem. But LiveLo is the reference. The place where Brazilian points pool before becoming miles. Recognize the shape, because this series has spent 2 volumes describing its Asian ghost. LiveLo is what a neutral points settlement layer looks like at national scale. The role HeyMax is assembling in Singapore and Hong Kong through its coalition lattice. The role nobody in Japan or Korea occupies at all. One currency, many earn sources, many premium exits. Transfer bonuses as the engagement engine. The differences are equally instructive. LiveLo is bank-owned, its neutrality is a duopoly's neutrality. It is interchange era in its funding DNA, the bank card points that feed it are the shrinking toll of Chapter 2, and it is domestically bounded. But as an existence proof, it is formidable. A points hub can reach tens of millions of members, sustain itself on transfer economics and earn mall commissions, and become the default answer to, where do my points go, for an entire country. 3 LiveLo dynamics matter for the almanac, and 1 for the ledger. First, the transfer bonus culture. Brazilian programs run transfer bonuses, 30, 50, occasionally 100% extra when moving points to a given airline, with a frequency that has trained members never to transfer at par. The community tracks bonus calendars the way Japan's tracks campaigns. The airlines use bonuses to pull float from the hubs when they need revenue, and the practice quietly reprices the whole system. The real exchange rate is the bonus rate, and everyone knows it. This is the campaignization dynamic the Japan volume documented, operating on the transfer leg instead of the earn leg. And its lesson for HeyMax's treaty tier discipline is sharpened by contrast. In markets where bonuses rule, the published ratio is fiction. Currencies that never bonus, HeyMax's 1-to-1 constitution, are selling exactly the certainty the bonus culture destroys. Second, the direct purchase economics. LiveLo sells points to members directly, at prices that fluctuate with promotions, and Brazilians buy at volume because the resale economy of Chapter 5 gives points a quasi-liquid exit price, making point purchases a tradable position. A points hub whose members treat inventory as an asset class. The fully financialized endgame of Chapter 1, operating at retail. Third, the hub's vulnerability. LiveLo's feedstock is bank card points. Bank card points are interchange. Interchange is what Pix erodes. The hub's response, deepening its earn mall, adding subscriptions, integrating Pix redemptions, is the adaptation playbook of Chapter 2 in miniature. And its trajectory over the next 5 years is the single best public experiment in whether a points hub can outlive its founding subsidy. HeyMax, building a hub whose feedstock is already merchant commissions rather than interchange, starts where LiveLo is trying to arrive. A genuine structural advantage, which the Almanac chapter will bank. And the ledger note, could LiveLo or Esfera ever be a counterparty? The deal shape exists in theory, Asian airline access for Brazilian points via HeyMax's treaty rack as bridge. It fails in practice on the corridor Null this volume keeps approaching. Brazilian members transferring toward JAL or Cathay would be buying award access to routes they do not fly. The hub is an almanac subject, not a partner. The hub mapped, the airlines it feeds come next. 3 programs, 2 of them possibly becoming 1, all of them shaped by the strangest consumer practice in world loyalty. Chapter 4, the Airline Three. Brazil's airline loyalty runs on 3 programs, Smiles, LATAM Pass, Tudo Azul, attached to the 3 carriers that dominate one of the world's largest domestic aviation markets. This chapter profiles the 3, the consolidation reshaping them, and the two properties that make Brazilian airline loyalty structurally different from anything in HeyMax's hemisphere. The three in outline. LATAM Pass is the largest. The Brazilian arm of LATAM's group program counts tens of millions of members and inherits the financialized history of Multiplis. Smiles, Gall's program, is the resale economy's favorite. Historically the most liquid currency in the Milheiro market of Chapter 5, with a culture of aggressive promotions and the most traded miles in the country. Tudo Azul, Azul's program, built its base on the carrier's unmatched domestic network breadth. Azul serves scores of cities nobody else flies, and a reputation for flexible points pricing. Around them, TAP's program retains a niche via the Lisbon Corridor. Combined active membership across the three exceeds 20 million. The consolidation, carefully stated because it is in motion. Gall and Azul, the second and third carriers, entered a codeshare in 2024 and signed a memorandum toward fuller combination in 2025. The competition and financial machinery continues to grind, and this volume asserts no outcome, but the loyalty implication of any deepening is large. Smiles and Tudo Azul together would form a program rivaling LATAM Pass's scale. And consolidation processes historically trigger the events loyalty analysts watch for: currency mergers at negotiated ratios, partner list rationalizations, windows of member retention generosity. For the Almanac, a live case of what happens to two financialized currencies when their parents merge. The exact scenario Asia will eventually see in some form, and one this series has never had a public example of. Now the two structural properties that distinguish the Brazilian three from every airline program this series has priced. Property 1, they are domestic redemption programs at their core. The overwhelming use of Brazilian miles is domestic flights, the São Paulo to Rio Bridge, the vast internal network where flying competes with nothing, Brazilian distances defeat buses, and there is no rail. International premium redemptions exist and animate the enthusiast media. But the program's economic engine is domestic seats. This inverts the Asian pattern this series knows, where the miles aspirational core is international premium cabins and domestic redemption is the pressure valve. The consequence matters enormously for this volume. Brazilian mile demand is almost perfectly decoupled from the international corridors a foreign platform would bring. A feeder selling access to Asian award charts would be selling the one thing Brazilian members demonstrably value least. Property 2. The programs coexist with and increasingly embrace the resale economy. Miles resale, a gray zone in most markets and criminalized in some, is in Brazil a semi-institutionalized practice the programs have alternately fought and courted. The brokers operate openly. The programs sell points knowing where they flow. And the 2023 collapse, next chapter, happened precisely because the arbitrage had become industrial. A market where the airline's own currencies function as bearer instruments with market prices is a market whose loyalty psychology, value extraction over aspiration, differs at the root from the communities HeyMax serves. For the ledger, the anchor test runs quickly. Would any of the three sell feeder access to a Singapore platform? Almost certainly. These are the most commercially aggressive programs in the hemisphere. The question fails on the other side. HeyMax's members would be buying access to programs whose value concentrates in Brazilian domestic seats they will never occupy. The anchor doctrine requires mutual deficit. Here, neither side has won. The three are almanac subjects and, in the consolidation window, a masterclass to watch, not partners to sign. Which leaves the practice that makes Brazilian loyalty famous and infamous at once. The Milheiro Economy, its brokers, and the $500 million collapse that redefined the market's politics. Chapter 5, the Milheiro Economy. Every loyalty market has its optimizers. Japan has ground milers who convert points through routes. America has churners who harvest welcome bonuses. Brazil has Milheiros, and what they do exists nowhere else at scale. They sell their miles, for cash, through open commercial brokerages, as ordinary household income. This chapter documents the world's only mass miles-resale economy, and the 2023 collapse that turned it into the largest consumer catastrophe in loyalty history. The practice: a Brazilian household accumulates miles, card earn, hub transfers during bonus windows, direct point purchases timed to promotions, and sells them to brokers. Platforms like Milhas and Milhas, which aggregate consumer miles and monetize them by issuing airline tickets for third-party buyers at below retail prices. The seller receives cash per 1,000 miles at published rates. The broker earns the spread. The buyer gets a cheap ticket, booked, technically, as someone else's award redemption. At peak, the ecosystem involved millions of participants. Milheiro is a recognized side hustle identity, with YouTube channels teaching yield optimization. The airline's posture oscillated between hostility, terms of service bans, account closures, and accommodation. The volumes were, after all, buying their points, and the practice settled into tolerated scale. The mechanism's genius and its flaw were the same thing. It gave miles a cash bid. A liquid resale price transformed Brazilian miles from coupons into quasi-securities, enabling the buy low sell high behavior of Chapter 3. Disciplining program devaluations, a falling resale price is public, and creating the fully financialized consumer Chapter 1 promised. But a market with a cash bid invites leverage on the bid, and that is what 123 Milhas built. The platform sold travel packages at prices well below market, on the promise of fulfilling them later with cheaply acquired miles, effectively shorting future ticket prices funded by consumer prepayments. When fares rose through 2022 and 2023, the short went underwater at industrial scale. In August 2023, 123 Milhas suspended its flexible package line, offering vouchers instead of refunds. The complaint wave broke records. The group, having just acquired Milhas, entered judicial recovery with combined debts around $500 million. The tourism ministry deregistered it. And tens of thousands of consumers, many of modest means, lost holidays and savings. Milhas was dragged down within weeks. Congress convened inquiries. The airline's enforcement hardened. And the resale economy's surviving tier operates today under scrutiny its founders never imagined. The findings for the series' purposes: 3. First, the collapse was a leverage failure, not a resale failure. The consumer-to-consumer miles trade continues, chastened. What died was the derivative built on top, prepaid packages shorting fare inflation. The distinction matters for the almanac. Because the underlying phenomenon, consumers treating transferable currency as sellable property, is the direction all financialized loyalty travels, HeyMax's included. The Brazilian lesson is not that resale destroys markets. It is that any structure turning member prepayments into price speculation eventually meets its 2023. Second, trust vacuums after loyalty catastrophes are real, national, and owned by incumbents. Post-collapse, Brazilian consumers migrated toward the program's official channels. The airlines pressed their advantage. The regulatory reflex strengthened official structures. The gap the collapse opened, a trustworthy home for miles value, was absorbed by exactly the incumbents whose currencies were never at risk. Even Brazil's most dramatic deficit healed inward. Third, the conduct ledger's reach is global. The 123 Milhas name is now loyalty's worldwide cautionary tale, cited in every market's consumer press, including Asia's, whenever prepaid travel or point schemes seek trust. For HeyMax, whose first product takes prepayment against future value, the Brazilian archive is the reputational whether it operates under. Every first adjacent design decision this series has flagged, the no-custody architecture, the regulatory carve-outs, the exit conduct discipline, is, in effect, proofing against the comparison. And the fact that the comparison will be made by any regulator or journalist doing diligence is itself a design constraint worth naming in a strategy document. The Milheiro Economy mapped, the world's only cash bid loyalty market, its derivative catastrophe, its chastened survival. The fintech giants who bank this population and run their own rewards answer come next. Chapter 6: The Fintech Giants. No market audit of Brazil closes without its fintech tier, because Brazil built the largest digital banks on Earth, and their rewards choices complete the competitive map while delivering one of the volume's cleanest almanac lessons. Nubank first, because Nubank is a category of one. The Purple Bank counts over 100 million customers across Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia, more than any digital bank anywhere. More customers than most countries have adults. Built on free accounts, a famously loved credit card, and app experience in a market whose incumbent banks were famously unloved. Its rewards posture is the instructive part. Nubank Rewards launched as a points program, points on cards spend, redeemable against purchases, with airline transfer flirtations. It was repositioned over time toward a subscription bundle, and the company's evident conviction is that rewards are a feature of the relationship, not its engine. Retention economics favoring product breadth, loans, insurance, investments, the premium tier, over currency generosity. The largest fintech in the hemisphere looked at loyalty and concluded, useful, not central. Banco Inter, the second-tier giant, made the more interesting choice for this series. Its super app includes a full shopping mall with cashback, the shopback model embedded inside a bank, plus a loyalty points layer, making Inter the closest Brazilian analog to the coalition app shape HeyMax runs. Itaú, Santander, and Bradesco run their points through the hub structures of Chapter 3. And the acquire fintechs, Stone, PagSeguro, power the merchant side of Pix's new economy, where the merchant-funded rewards of Chapter 2 increasingly live. 3 observations, and the almanac lesson. First, the giant's rewards restraint is Pix rational. In a market where the payment rail pays no toll, funding a rich points currency from banking economics is a deliberate luxury. Nubank's evolution from points toward bundles tracks exactly the funding logic this series has now traced through 4 markets. No toll, no currency. The Brazilian fintechs are not behind on loyalty. They are ahead on its post-interchange economics. And their answer, subscriptions, bundles, merchant-funded cashback, is a preview of the product mix Asia's fintechs will converge on as pay-now-era economics mature. Second, the coalition seat is nonetheless contested in Brazil by the bank's hubs and the fintech super apps simultaneously, which distinguishes Brazil from every Asian market this series has called open. There is no unclaimed settlement layer role here. The financialized market built its hubs a decade ago. The fintech giants bundle their own ecosystems. Whatever deficits Brazil has, the neutral currency vacancy HeyMax occupies in Singapore is not among them. Third, the talent and model export runs outward. Brazilian fintech's innovations, Pix native product design, installment mechanics, the Molenbank pattern, increasingly ship to the rest of Latin America and are studied globally. For the threat file, if any Latin fintech ever internationalizes toward Asia, it would be from this cohort. A low-probability, high-capability watch entry, well behind the American challengers in likelihood. And the almanac lesson, stated once. Brazil shows what consumer finance rewards look like after the interchange era, because Brazil got there first. The answer is layered. Premium credit survives on status and installments. Mass market rewards migrate to merchant-funded cashback and engagement bundles. The aspirational currency consolidates around the airline programs and their hubs, and a settlement hub with pre-Pix DNA fights to refound its economics. Map that onto Singapore in 2032, and the strategic instruction for HeyMax repeats a third time, now with a Brazilian accent. The coalition settlement role survives the transition only for operators whose funding never depended on the toll, and the time to entrench that role is before the local Pix arrives in force, not after. The commercial map is complete. The people who narrate it, Brazil's enormous, sophisticated, scandal-tempered points community, close the audit before the verdict machinery runs. Chapter 7: The Milhas Nation. Brazil's points community is one of the world's largest and most distinctive. Profiling it completes the audit. because its scale disproves any notion that Brazil lacks loyalty sophistication, and its character explains why that sophistication changes nothing about the verdict. The scale. Brazilian points media operates at a magnitude between America's industry and Japan's press corps. Milhas Destinos, the flagship, functions as a national deals and miles newsroom, whose fair alert culture shapes booking behavior countrywide. Passageiro de Primeira and Pontos Pravor anchor the analytical tier. The YouTube ecosystem runs to channels with hundreds of thousands of subscribers, teaching Milheiro yield strategies. And the community's forums and WhatsApp groups, the Brazilian internet's native organizing unit, trade transfer bonus intelligence at a velocity Japan's campaign watchers would recognize. Points literacy reaches deep into the middle class, propelled by the resale economy's income promise. This is the only country where miles is a household side hustle category, alongside rideshare driving. The character, 3 traits with analytical weight. First, the community is yield-oriented, not aspiration-oriented. The content center of gravity is extraction, cents per mile achieved on resale, transfer bonus arbitrage chains, promo fare stacking, rather than the premium cabin dream that organizes Asian and American communities. The Financialised Market of Chapter 1 produced a financialized audience. Miles are positions, and the media is market commentary. Second, the community is scandal-tempered. The 123 Milhas catastrophe ran through this community's own channels, the same outlets that once promoted package deals covered the collapse, the inquiries, the victims. And the surviving discourse carries a hardened skepticism toward any scheme whose economics are not visible. Trust, post-2023, is earned in disclosures. Third, the community is domestically focused, mirroring the redemption reality of Chapter 4. The celebrated wins are domestic upgrades and South American hops. The Asia chart deep dives that fill Singaporean and American media are a niche genre here, because the flights themselves are a niche. What would it make of HeyMax? Little imagination required. The mechanics coverage would be competent. This community audits conversion chains for sport. The verdict would be immediate. A currency whose exits are Asian award charts, whose funding is Singapore commissions, whose value proposition assumes members fly Cathay and JAL. Offered to an audience that flies Sao Paulo to Recife and prices everything in resale reais. No hostility required. The proposition simply denominates value in a geography the audience does not inhabit. Fair, fast, irrelevant. The reception a currency gets when the corridor is null. The almanac extraction, because the community itself teaches 2 things. First, the yield culture endpoint. Brazil shows what a points community becomes when currency financialization completes. Analysts, not dreamers. And Asian communities are drifting the same way. The Japan volumes burn fast practitioners, the valuation tables coming to Singapore. Operators who plan for dreamers, while their audience becomes analysts misprice everything. HeyMax's published rate, no fine print constitution happens to be the design analysts' trust. Second, the scandal dividend. Post-collapse Brazil demonstrates that a mass loyalty catastrophe durably raises the market's disclosure standards. The surviving media now audits solvency questions no loyalty journalist asked before 2023, and operators with clean, inspectable economics gain share in the aftermath. The lesson travels. In any market that suffers its own version of the collapse, the no-custody, published price operator is the flight-to-quality destination. Design for the audit that follows someone else's catastrophe. The audit stands complete. A large, growing, financialized, scandal-tempered loyalty nation, fully mapped. The verdict machinery now runs, and in this volume it runs fast because the decisive chapter is not a gap hunt or a wholesale wall. It is a map, the one showing which routes connect Brazil to the places HeyMax exists. Chapter 8, The Gap Hunt. The ownership test gap hunt, run on Brazil. And for the first time in 3 volumes, the hunt finds things. Brazil has genuine deficits of exactly the kinds HeyMax monetizes in Asia. Walking them honestly and watching each one fail anyway is what makes this volume's refusal rigorous rather than reflexive. Candidate 1, the post-collapse trust vacuum. The 123 Milhas catastrophe left a population of burned consumers, a hardened disclosure culture, and demonstrable demand for a trustworthy home for miles value. The exact reputational position, published rates, no custody, clean conduct, this series has documented HeyMax holding in Asia. The gap is real. Now the ownership test. Who naturally fills a trust vacuum? The incumbents whose currencies never failed, the airline's official programs, the bank hubs, plus the regulator, whose scrutiny now advantages licensed local operators. A foreign platform with no local history enters a trust-scarce market with the least trust of any participant. The vacancy is real and structurally unreachable by outsiders. Owner, incumbents. Gap, closed to foreigners precisely because of what opened it. Candidate 2, the stable rate wedge. Brazilian loyalty is campaignisade beyond even Japan. The transfer bonus culture means real rates fluctuate constantly. Could an unconditional, never-moving currency wedge in Japan thesis style? The mechanics fail twice. The funding fails. A stable rate must be funded from margins. And Brazil's commission pool, in a Pix economy with hyper-competitive e-commerce, is thin in a currency whose volatility against HeyMax's cost base adds unhedgeable rate risk. And the demand fails. Chapter 7's yield culture values volatility. The bonus calendar is the community's income engine, not its trauma. Japan's wedge worked because instability was the incumbent's chosen weakness and the community's documented pain. Brazil's community monetizes the instability. Same structure, opposite psychology. Gap, illusory on inspection. Candidate 3, the Asia Shelf Brazilian edition. Brazilian programs international exits skew Atlantic and North American. Asian award access from Brazilian currencies is thin. A real gap? Formally, yes, and it fails on the redemption reality of Chapter 4. Brazilian members redeem domestically. The Asia chart niche is a rounding error of a rounding error. And the roots themselves barely exist, the next chapter's null. An inventory gap with no inventory demand. Owner, nobody, because no one profits from filling it. Candidate 4, the Pix native rewards layer. The genuinely novel one. Chapter 2 showed Brazilian rewards replumbing toward merchant-funded, payment moment earn. And the field for a neutral, multi-merchant, Pix native rewards layer, the coalition settlement role, rebuilt post-interchange, is contested but not settled. Livelo fights its legacy economics. The Fintech Giants bundle inward. The acquirers own merchants but not consumers. If HeyMax's model has a Brazilian analog, it is here. A Pix-era coalition currency. And the ownership test's answer is the chapter's finding. The natural owner is a Brazilian operator, with Pix integration, local merchant networks, real denominated economics, local data protection compliance. And the post-collapse regulatory relationships. The strongest candidates are the acquirer fintechs and the super apps already holding both sides. A Singapore platform brings nothing to this race but distance. No member base to seed it, no merchant relationships, no local license, no trust history. The gap is real, important, and belongs, like every Brazilian gap, to Brazilians. The synthesis and the taxonomy work. 3 volumes of gap hunts have now produced 3 closure mechanisms. Gaps closed by capital, America. Gaps closed by economics, Canada. And now gaps closed by geography. Deficits that are real but reachable only through assets, members, corridors, trust, licenses that do not travel. The hunt's final form asks 3 questions. Does the gap exist? Who owns it? And can the hunter's assets reach it? Brazil is the market that makes the 3rd question primary. Its formal answer is the corridor arithmetic of the next chapter, where the volume's verdict actually lives. Chapter 9, the record and the Null Corridor. The record chapter and the corridor chapter merge here, as they did for Canada. And in this volume, their combined finding is the verdict, so the arithmetic gets stated with particular care. The record, quickly, because it is the 3rd identical 0 in 3 volumes. No Brazilian prefix in the sign-up gate, No Latin American mention in any HeyMax artifact this series has audited. The Asia-Pacific fence at its most distant. 0 roles, 0 localization, 0 merchant strategy beyond the global affiliate defaults. No Brazilian program ever appeared even in cash for miles. The June removal list contained no Latin name to remove. The 0 is total. And after 2 volumes establishing why such zeros are comprehension rather than neglect, it needs no further reading. It is the correct answer to a question the company has never had reason to ask. The corridor, here the volume's decisive numbers live, walk them slowly. Direction 1, HeyMax's members toward Brazil. There are no nonstop flights between Southeast Asia and Brazil. None. A Singaporean bound for Sao Paulo connects through Doha, Dubai, Istanbul, Addis Ababa, or North America. Journeys of 24 to 30+ hours that only the determined undertake. The traffic exists, business travel, the odd carnival pilgrimage, a small diaspora. But it is a rounding error in HeyMax's member booking data by any estimate this research could construct. Singapore's resident departures toward all of South America run in the low tens of thousands annually, against millions toward Japan alone. And the redemption path for that trickle is already optimal on HeyMax's existing shelf. Qatar Privilege Club, a treaty partner, serves Sao Paulo from Doha. The Gulf and Turkish carriers that own this corridor are precisely the programs HeyMax's roster reaches. A member flying to Brazil today redeems through Doha on a partner HeyMax already has. There is nothing to add. Direction 2, Brazilians toward HeyMax's markets. The mirror trickle. Brazilian outbound travel concentrates on the Americas and Iberia. Miami, Orlando, Buenos Aires, Lisbon, Paris. Asia is a marginal destination. Japan's heritage ties with its Japanese-Brazilian community generate a measurable but small flow. Southeast Asia is exotic honeymoon territory. Served by the same one-stop Gulf routings. No Brazilian program needs Asian feeder currencies for members who do not fly Asian routes. No Asian platform gains members from flows this thin. Formalize what this means against the series method. Because Brazil breaks the pattern in a definitional way, every prior refusal still had a corridor. Korea's volume built its entire alternative strategy on serving Korea-bound demand from outside. America's and Canada's inbound to Asia flows were enormous, even when unmonetizable. Brazil is the series' first null corridor. No meaningful demand in either direction, no route infrastructure to carry it, no diaspora bridge to seat it, and the corridor is the transmission mechanism for every asset HeyMax owns. Members generate bookings. Treaties serve routes. Coalition partners serve travelers. With the corridor at null, HeyMax's entire asset base decouples from the market. The treaties serve routes Brazilians don't fly. The members don't fly Brazil. The coalition has no travelers to serve. Entry would not be expansion. It would be founding a second, unrelated company that happens to share a brand. One more check closes the chapter, because rigor demands testing the null against change. Could the corridor open? The candidate mechanisms. A nonstop route, repeatedly studied by carriers, Singapore Airlines once flew a Sao Paulo tag through Barcelona and dropped it years ago. The economics of ultra-long-haul thin routes have only worsened. A trade-driven surge. Brazil-Asia trade is huge, but flows through commodities, not premium passengers. A diaspora shift, none in prospect. The honest probability of a corridor materializing within a decade, low enough that the falsifier section can carry it. Geography is the one market condition, no strategy changes. The record, 0 correct. The corridor, null, decisive. What remains of the volume is extraction, the compressed battlefield, the almanac that justifies the study, the empty ledger, and the verdict that names Brazil's category. Chapter 10, The Battlefield Compressed. Reception, opportunities, and threats in one chapter, because the null corridor collapses all three into short forms. Reception, settled by Chapter 7. The Milhas Nation would process a HeyMax arrival competently and dismiss it in a news cycle. A currency denominated in a geography the audience does not inhabit. no hostility, no controversy. The specific Brazilian edition is the post-collapse solvency lens, under which a foreign prepaid adjacent platform draws sharper diligence questions than local operators face. HeyMax First's existence would be noted and questioned by journalists trained on the 123 Milhas file. Fair, fast, irrelevant, with an asterisk of suspicion the archive guarantees. Opportunities counted at their true size, too, both external to the market. First, the Almanac, the reason this volume runs 16 chapters instead of 3, formalized next chapter. Brazil's financialization arc and Pix adaptation are the highest value case studies in world loyalty for an operator on HeyMax's trajectory. Free, public, continuously updated. Second, the contingent wholesale bookmark. If any Brazilian institution ever seeks Asian award inventory, a hub differentiating its catalog, a consolidated Galazul program building international breadth, HeyMax's treaty rack is the efficient bridge. The standing reactive term sheet, the American volume's supplier's gate design, covers the case without a single proactive step. Probability, low. Cost of readiness, 0. File and forget, nothing else survives, no entry variant, no diaspora play, no partnership with reach. Threats, and the register is the shortest in the series, none direct. No Brazilian operator threatens HeyMax's markets. The Fintech Giants' international ambitions point at Latin America. The program's feeder appetites point at bank hubs. The distance that nulls HeyMax's entry nulls theirs, symmetrically. The genuine threat content is indirect and already cataloged. The Pix template, the model for Asia's instant payment futures. A structural weather system, not a competitor. And the 123 Milhas archive, the reputational climate for any prepaid model scrutiny, anywhere, HeyMax First included. Both are almanac items wearing threat labels. And both are answered by the same standing prescriptions the series has now issued 3 times. Toll-independent revenue, custody-free architecture, exit conduct discipline. The compression itself carries the chapter's meta-finding. When the corridor is null, the battlefield chapters approach 0 length, because battle requires contact. Brazil and HeyMax occupy the same industry on non-intersecting planes, the completest strategic disengagement this series has documented. And the cleanest demonstration that market analysis is, ultimately, corridor analysis. The almanac, where the volume's real value concentrates, follows. Chapter 11, The Almanac. The chapter that justifies the volume. Brazil will never be HeyMax's market. It is already HeyMax's textbook. 5 lessons, extracted and addressed. Lesson 1. Financialization is a one-way road with a known route. Brazil ran the full arc. Programs as marketing, programs as financial products, programs as public companies, currencies as consumer asset classes, arbitrage industrialization, derivative catastrophe, chastened maturity. Every financializing loyalty economy travels some prefix of this road. And HeyMax, published wholesale prices, a fintech lattice, yield products, is several stations along already. The Brazilian map marks the hazards ahead by name. When your currency gains a cash bid and community resale pricing is an informal bid, leverage will assemble on top of it. The operator's duty is to make the leveraged structures impossible to build from its own rails. Governed rates, transfer caps where needed, no prepaid packages whose economics depend on future price movements, catastrophe proofing as a design principle. Lesson 2. The toll dies by technology before it dies by law. Brazil's interchange caps were footnotes. Pix was the extinction event. Singapore's PayNow and Hong Kong's faster payment system are Pix's cousins, growing along the same curve with a half-decade lag. Every strategic plan HeyMax writes should carry a Pix clause. Assume merchant-funded, payment moment, toll-free rewards become the mass-market norm within the decade, and hold the coalition settlement roll through the transition by being the operator whose economics never needed the toll. The Brazilian survivors demonstrate that position is real and winnable. Lesson 3. The payment moment is the next earned surface. Brazil's replumbed programs attach rewards directly to Pix transactions, merchant-funded, instant, cardless. The Asian translation is a product roadmap, pay now linked earn, QR moment rewards, the Hawkerand convenience tier that cards never captured. HeyMax's no custody, bank-linked architecture is closer to Pix native than any card-era incumbents. The Brazilian precedent says, build the payment moment earn rail before the local instant payment culture finishes forming its habits. Lesson 4. Transfer bonus culture is a currency killer wearing a growth costume. Brazil's bonus calendar trained a nation to never transfer at par, collapsing published rates into fiction, repricing the system around campaign peaks. The terminal form of the campaignization this series first mapped in Japan. The doctrine for HeyMax's treaty tier hardens accordingly. The one-to-one that never moves and never bonuses is not conservatism. It is the only design that stays credible after the market learns what bonuses do. The moment a currency starts bonusing, its par rate becomes a memory of its ceiling. Lesson 5. Catastrophe reprices the whole category and rewards the auditable. Post-collapse Brazil runs on solvency journalism, disclosure reflexes, and flight to quality toward inspectable operators. Some Asian market will eventually suffer its own loyalty catastrophe, a buy now pay later points scheme, a prepaid travel platform, a devaluation scandal. And when it does, the repricing will favor exactly the design this series keeps crediting. Published rates, no custody, clean exits, funded miles. HeyMax's cheapest insurance against the industry's future scandal is being visibly unable to cause it. And the Brazilian archive shows that after the fire, the market can tell the difference. 5 lessons, 1 addressee, 0 market entry required. The almanac is the volume's yield and it prices the study at a bargain. 16 chapters of analysis for 5 doctrines that would each justify the read alone. The ledger, empty, and the verdict, naming Brazil's category, close the book. Chapter 12, The Ledger and the Plan. The partnership ledger and the operating plan merged as Canada's were, and Brazil's versions are the series' shortest, because a null corridor empties both. The ledger, held, nothing with Brazilian reach. The one adjacency is Qatar Privilege Club, the treaty partner whose Doha hub already carries the corridor's trickle optimally. The Brazil question, insofar as members ever ask it, is answered by an asset signed for other reasons. Reachable, nothing warranting outreach. The Brazilian institutions that would take a meeting, and the hubs and programs are commercially open by financialized temperament, offer deal shapes that fail on mutual deficit. They need nothing Asian. HeyMax's members need nothing Brazilian. The one contingent entry, filed from Chapter 10, the reactive wholesale bookmark should a consolidated Galazul program or an ambitious hub ever seek Asian award inventory. The standing term sheet covers it. Probability low, readiness free. Closed, the market, by geography rather than by anyone's decision. The Brazilian ledger is the first in the series with no live line at all. A fact this volume records without regret, because ledgers exist to prevent wishful entries, and Brazil will tempt future strategists exactly as often as its market reports cross their desks. A $3 billion loyalty market, growing at 14%, makes a seductive slide for anyone who has not read Chapter 9. The plan, correspondingly minimal. 3 standing items, costing perhaps 2 analyst days a year. 1. The Almanac subscription. Primary. Brazil enters HeyMax's annual reading cycle as the Financialization and Pix Observatory. The 5 doctrines of Chapter 11 refreshed against each year's developments. Livelow's post-toll refounding progress. The Galazul loyalty consolidation, a live currency merger case study when it completes. The Pix native rewards race among the acquirer fintechs, and the regulatory aftershocks of 2023 as they shape prepaid model rules globally. No other unreachable market earns a standing feed. Brazil earns it because its experiments run 5 years ahead of Asia's equivalents. 2. The Null Corridor watch. Trivial but formal. 1 check per year. Has a Southeast Asia to Brazil nonstop launched or been firmly scheduled? Route announcements are public and slow. The check costs minutes, and it is the volume's designated falsifier trigger, the only event that reopens any Brazilian question. 3. The Written Zero, 3rd edition. The standing prohibition on Brazilian entry, diaspora pilots, marketing experiments, and partnership outreach. Index to this volume's chapters. With the institutional memory rationale now standard, the market's headline numbers guarantee the pitch deck will recur, and the written answer must outlive the analysts who first derived it. Nothing else. No triggers beyond the corridor check. No contingency reviews. No watch-tier names beyond the wholesale bookmark. The plan's brevity is its correctness. Strategy allocates attention, and Brazil's correct allocation is 2 days a year of reading, plus the discipline to do nothing else. The cheapest almanac subscription in the series, attached to the firmest zero. What remains, the 5th category the series was promised, the prohibitions and the verdict. Chapter 13, the 5th category. Canada gave the series a taxonomy: deficit, completed, destroyed, middle, and promised Brazil would stress it. It has. Brazil fits nowhere. This chapter names the 5th category properly, because the series will meet its members again. Test the 4 types against the Brazilian facts. Deficit market. Brazil has deficits, the trust vacuum, the Pix native coalition seat. The gap hunt found more genuine vacancy here than in either North American market. But deficit markets are defined by gaps the entrant can own, and Brazil's are geographically sealed. Completed. The layers are contested, not full. Livelo fights for its post-toll life. The Pix rewards race is unsettled. A Brazilian startup faces a genuinely open field. Destroyed. The pool took Pix's torpedo, yet the loyalty economy grows at 14%. Adaptation, not destruction. Middle. Brazil is 200 million people with hemisphere-scale institutions. Nothing about it is small. 4 types, 4 misfits. The missing variable, made explicit by Chapter 9. Every prior category described the market's internal condition, its gaps, its pool, its incumbents, because every prior market connected to HeyMax's asset base through some corridor, so internal condition determined opportunity. Brazil's internal condition is rich and open, and none of it matters. Because the connecting variable is null. The 5th category is defined not by what the market contains, but by what it shares with the entrant. Nothing. Call it the orthogonal market, a market whose loyalty economy runs on axes that never intersect the entrants. No shared routes, no shared members, no shared partners, no shared trust infrastructure. Orthogonal markets can be fascinating, gapped, growing, and absolutely irrelevant simultaneously, which is precisely Brazil's profile, and precisely why the category needed naming before its seductive market reports claimed a strategy cycle. The category's properties, derived for reuse. Property 1. Orthogonal markets are almanac markets. With commercial engagement nulled, their entire value is informational. And because orthogonality often correlates with independent evolution, systems that developed without contact evolve different solutions, they are frequently the best almanac markets. Brazil's Pix and financialization experiments are valuable to Asia precisely because they ran without Asian assumptions. Study them harder than the connected markets. Enter them never. Property 2. Orthogonality is symmetric and stable. No Brazilian operator threatens Asia, for the same reasons no Asian operator reaches Brazil. The Null Corridor protects both directions, and geography moves on centennial timescales. Orthogonal markets are the only type that generates no threat file. Property 3. The category's boundary is the corridor test, run first. The taxonomy's operational sequence now inverts for distant markets. Before auditing gaps or pools, check the corridor. Members, routes, diaspora, partners. If it nulls, classify as orthogonal. Extract the almanac, write the zero, and save the audit budget. This volume ran the full audit deliberately to establish the category with evidence. Its successors can use the shortcut it paid for. And the map completed for the series. HeyMax's world now sorts into 5 types with 5 playbooks: deficit markets to enter the Asian frontier, completed markets to watch America, middle markets to sign Canada's Summit Institution playbook, destroyed markets to serve from outside Korea's corridor doctrine, and orthogonal markets to read Brazil and the category's other likely members across the distant continents. 5 types, 5 playbooks, 13 volumes of derivation. The prohibitions and the verdict close both the volume and the commission that produced it. Chapter 14, What Not to Do. The Prohibitions chapter, in its briefest edition, because orthogonal markets generate few temptations, but the few recur predictably, and each arrives carrying a market report. Do not enter on the market size slide. The temptation's exact form is already in circulation. Brazil's loyalty market at $3.33 billion by 2029, growing 14% annually, in a country of 200 million with world-class points literacy. Every element is true. None of it touches the Null Corridor. Market size is a property of the market. Opportunity is a property of the intersection between market and entrant, and Brazil's intersection with HeyMax is the empty set. The report will cross a desk every year. The written zero exists so its refutation costs a footnote rather than a strategy cycle. Do not build the LATAM bridge, the sophisticated version of the temptation, not Brazil directly, but Latin America as a future region, a Mexican toehold, a Miami hinge structure, a partnership with a Latin fintech as optionality. Each version rederives the same fallacy at larger scale. HeyMax's assets, Asian treaties, Asian members, Asian coalition, do not reach any Latin market. And regional optionality built on unreachable foundations is expenditure, not option value. The company that correctly refused the world's largest loyalty market, America, with real corridors, has no business acquiring exposure to markets with none. Do not import the Milheiro mechanics, the subtle temptation aimed at product rather than expansion. Brazil's resale economy demonstrates that consumer miles selling drives engagement, purchase volume, and financialized enthusiasm. Someone will eventually propose sanctioned max miles resale, a buyback program, a member-to-member transfer market, as an engagement feature. The Brazilian archive is the complete answer. A cash bid on the currency invites leverage on the bid. Leverage on the bid ends at 123 Milhas, and the no custody, no secondary market design that looks conservative beside Brazilian dynamism is, on the full evidence of this volume, the design that survives. The one Brazilian product to import is the one the almanac already exported. Pix native, merchant-funded, payment moment earn. The mechanism, not the market. And do not let the almanac become an itinerary. The standing meta prohibition, 3rd edition, study markets attract visit impulses, a conference, an exploratory trip, a local hire to deepen the research. The almanac's entire economics depend on its costlessness. The moment Brazil consumes travel budgets and management attention, the subscription is mispriced. 2 analyst days a year, from Singapore, forever. 4 prohibitions. 1 route, familiar now across 3 refusal volumes. Every temptation is a way of converting information value into expenditure. And orthogonal markets, where information is the only value, punish the conversion fastest. The verdict formalizes the discipline. Chapter 15, Should HeyMax Enter Brazil? 15 chapters, the verdict in the series' required form, and, as the closing volume of a 3-market commission, the commission's synthesis. The verdict, no, the series' 3rd consecutive refusal, and its most distinctive, the first delivered on demand grounds rather than supply grounds. Brazil's loyalty economy is large, growing, structurally open in places, and genuinely gapped. The audit found more real vacancy here than in either North American market. None of it is reachable. Because the connecting tissue of every HeyMax asset, the corridor of members, routes, treaties, and trust, is null between Southeast Asia and Brazil. And no strategy changes geography. Brazil is not a closed door. It is a door on a different building. The volume names the category the finding creates, the orthogonal market. Fascinating, gapped, growing, and irrelevant simultaneously. And it hands the series the corridor first shortcut that will spare future distant market studies the full audit this one ran to establish the type. What Brazil is to HeyMax settled, the best almanac in world loyalty. The financialization arc, iPod programs, consumer miles resale, the derivative catastrophe, maps the road HeyMax's own financializing currency travels. Hazards flagged by name. The Pix Earthquake previews the post-interchange future racing toward pay-now-era Asia. And the Brazilian Survivor's Playbook, merchant-funded, payment moment, toll-free rewards is HeyMax's product roadmap for that future, validated at national scale. 5 doctrines extracted at the cost of a reading subscription. 2 analyst days a year, the cheapest standing asset in the company's strategic inventory. The falsifiers, brief as the ledger. If a Southeast Asia to Brazil nonstop corridor opens and sustains, the annual check, the orthogonality weakens, and the classification gets rerun. If HeyMax itself becomes a multi-region platform through some future combination, this series cannot foresee acquisition, merger, the American challenger scenarios of the mirror volume. The corridor calculus resets under new ownership of the question. And if a Brazilian institution arrives asking for Asian inventory, the reactive bookmark opens. Absent all 3, the 0 stands, indexed and permanent. And the commission's synthesis, because 3 volumes commissioned together deserve a joint conclusion. The Americas tour asked whether HeyMax's future includes the Western Hemisphere. The answer came back unanimous and differentiated. America, the completed mirror, never to enter, always to watch. Its challengers the real threat, and its filings the real gift. Canada, the middle market. One negotiation worth having, sign the currency, skip the country. The strangest yes-shaped no in the series. Brazil, the orthogonal almanac, never to enter, always to read. 3 refusals, 3 different reasons, 1 consistent doctrine underneath. HeyMax is a creature of its corridors. It exists where its members fly, where its treaties serve, where its coalition touches daily life, and the hemisphere holds none of that. The growth this series has mapped across 13 volumes lives entirely in Asia, the Japan Gate, the frontier stack. The coalition lattice. The deficit markets where the anchor logic runs. The Americas' contribution to that future is instruction, the mirror's warnings, the middle market's playbook, the almanac's doctrines, and the discipline of 3 written zeros, guarding the focus that makes the Asian strategy executable. 1 sentence for the series, closing its 15th book. The company that knows exactly where it is needed can read the whole world without wandering it. And the reading, this commission proved, is worth volumes. Research date, August 2026. Estimates labeled, not affiliated with any company named. Nothing in this volume is financial advice.